I mean, there's a lot going on in the news. The president just gave a barn burner of a speech, and he actually said that there's a number of things that he's going to do by executive order and individual action. But the fact of the matter is that he's facing basically an implacable Republican Party, a Republican Party that is absolutely not going to go along with anything he wants to do and is not going to, support anything he wants to do, period. And I don't know, it's going to be damn tough. But essentially what he said, and he used the phrase best deal a few times. I mean, maybe this is the successor to the better deal, a better deal. Maybe this is the successor to New Deal and Square Deal, Franklin Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. And of course, it doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't go anywhere near far enough. Back in 1985, the New York Times, where'd it go? I thought I had it. I don't. Back in 1985, the New York Times published an article about how the Great Society was working so well that Ronald Reagan was saying it's time to end it. And in that article, in 1985, this is the fourth year of the Reagan presidency. In that article, they point out that because of Great Society programs that made college free for young people and poor people who wanted to become doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists and physical therapists and you name it, that there was actually a surplus of doctors and dentists in the United States. And therefore Reagan was saying, let's do away with this free college stuff that Lyndon Johnson had put into place as part of the Great Society. And of course they did. It is incredible. And in this 1985 article, they just go through point after point after point of the items that are related to the Great Society and how successful they had been. In fact, I'm going to grab that printed out, and we'll get back to that at the bottom of the hour. It's just remarkable. But the president, and the net of what I'm saying on this, and why I started on this, is that the president is basically saying, we're going to abandon, at least in his mind, what he wants to do. He wants to abandon the failed policies of Reaganomics. We have 32 years of failed economic policies, trickle-down economics, supply-side economics. It has all been demonstrated to be nonsense. It does not work, right? It has failed. And he's saying, we're going to abandon that. And we're going to go back to stuff that worked. It worked for 50 years. You had two programs, one built on the other. The first was the New Deal. Franklin Roosevelt, started in 1933. Congress wouldn't do anything, the president and Congress wouldn't do anything prior to 33, prior to the 1932 election of Franklin Roosevelt during the Republican Hoover administration and Republicans in Congress. And so overwhelmingly, the people voted Democrats in and FDR, and he said, okay, we're going to do it. If business will not employ people, I will. And over the next decade and a half or so, or over the next decade, up to 1941, Franklin Roosevelt employed over 12 million people. The federal government employed over 12 million people with all these various programs. And what it did is it put the American economy back together. And then Lyndon Johnson came along and said, this country's still a disaster racially and with regard to poverty. I mean, we've got a good middle class started here, but we still have a disaster. We have an underclass. Let's do something about it. And he cut poverty in half and had just tremendous successes. So here's Obama saying, enough of this already. Do you have any clips of this together? Not yet. Okay, that's all right. And Obama's saying, we're going to abandon this nonsense that we've had historically, and we're going to move forward. And at the same time, you have the Republicans, and this is where it gets truly bizarre. suggesting the following. John Boehner says, the Labor Department, which protects workers' rights and works to make sure that people have decent wages, let's cut them by 13%. Amtrak. I took Amtrak to New York over the weekend. Great service. The trains rock around a fair amount. They don't go as fast as they could, but that's because the rails are privatized. Amtrak does not own the rail beds. They're owned by private corporations. And those private corporations own them to run freight on them, so they maintain them to standards acceptable to a coal car. But once you get on, Amtrak itself, great service, great schedules. I mean, it's doing well. I love Amtrak. I love riding on Amtrak. So what does John Boehner want to do? 33% cut. It's a great little graphic on this over at Democratic Underground where they summarized it. There's a good summary piece in today's New York Times on it. The IRS budget. They're auditing rich people to see if they're evading taxes. Let's cut their budget by 24%. The Environmental Protection Agency, they are harassing the poor Koch brothers. The Koch brothers are like, that's the second largest private corporation in America, and they do a lot of stuff that produces a lot of pollution. They make paper with Georgia Pacific and some of their other paper companies. They refine oil. They are a major oil company in the United States. And they do not like the EPA telling them that they've got to keep poisons out of the air and water. It's much more profitable to dump the poisons and let you and me pay for the cost of that by watching our kids get cancer. So let's cut the EPA by 34%. 34%. The Securities and Exchange Commission. We're in the middle of a crisis caused by Wall Street behaving illegally, criminally. Who oversees Wall Street? The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. When it was invented by Franklin Roosevelt, he put Joe Kennedy in charge of it the very first time, saying it takes a crook to catch a crook. That's the job of the SEC, to catch crooks on Wall Street. We can't have that, say the Republicans. John Boehner says, let's cut the Securities and Exchange Commission's budget by 18%. Fish and Wildlife Service. Again, we don't need those stinking parks or wildlands. Cut them by 27%. The rich people can do much better if you give that to them as a tax break. Low-income education grants. What? Poor people want to go to school? Cut it by 16%. Community development grants. What? You want to start programs in communities to build local poor communities to help, provide them with some cohesiveness and help them lift themselves out of poverty? Cut it by 50%. Alternative energy development. Alternative energy, are you kidding? The Koch brothers run an oil company. Cut it by 75%. The Affordable Care Act. Health care for people? Insurance companies can't cut you off because of a pre-existing condition? The government is going to subsidize poor people getting health care? Oh, my God. Cut that by 100%. That's Boehner's response and the Republicans' response to President Obama saying we're going to build a middle class.